Hi, I'm Paul Perdue, and I am the infrastructure nerd.
And I'm Mary Jo Boyd, a legal technologist. Most firms keep track of any advances that they cut checks out for out of their accounts payable software. And then they usually bill a client for those advances, and they want to get that money back. And we want to have this way to track how that all happens, and did they pay, did they not pay, what's going on. And so when we get to our GL, it's really hard to see that sometimes.
Sure. Tabs knows, but GL just knows it as a kind of a one lump sum number.
That's true.
Right. It'd be nice if there was some functionality that would help us tie the two together.
Yeah, and you know what? In version 19, they've actually come up with a way for us to do that.
Great. Could you show us that?
I can. So we're going to talk about how we can balance our advanced client costs. This has always been a very tricky problem for law firms. They will post their checks to accounts payable. They'll then bill a client in tabs, and that'll post to GL when they pay. But for whatever reason, that gets out of whack. Whether you've written up or written down, in advance, you've written off in advance, something happens in tabs that this entries don't get made over into GL. And so we go to look at what tab says we have outstanding for our client cost advance, and we look at what GL says that we have in our client cost advance account, and they don't match. So what version 19 has done is it's given us this tool that we can use to get those accounts into balance. And if we follow the instructions, it will be much easier to see if we have a discrepancy, and then maybe where it is so that we can find it. And more often than not, we can find this much faster when we use this report than we could in the past. And I would recommend that we probably run this report at least monthly. I would say you might even want to run it weekly if you have a lot of advances and a lot of changes to those advances so that you can catch those changes right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the process and how do we set this up so we can start tracking our advances and have them show up on the report properly. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to configure our general ledger. And to do that, we need to make sure that we have our account for our client cost advances set up to be an advanced client cost account. So we have to tell the system that, yes, this is where we're going to post these client cost advances. Now, I have firms that set these up all different ways. So the proper way, or I guess the best practice way that I would say that we would do this, is you would want a client cost advances account underneath your assets. It sits out there, and then things get posted to and from it as you write a check out of accounts payable. That amount is going to be debited to this account. When the client pays, it's going to be credited, and it will be a wash at some point, and who knows how long that can take, but at some point we want those things to wash out. So it's easy to have one account underneath your assets that's just designated for your client cost advances. That, again, would be the best practice. Now, I have seen firms that do it all kinds of other different ways. They have multiple accounts that they use for client cost advance. They break it down into court costs and different things. And if that's you, that's fine. There's other ways that we might have to go around and do some things to set this up. But in this video, what we're going to cover is the standard best practice way to do this. So in my test data here, I do have a client cost advance account set up underneath my assets. And I'm going to open this. I'm just going to double click it in my chart and show you that now in version 19, we have this little checkbox that says advanced client cost account. And I need to flag this, that this is the account that I want the report to track. So I'm going to just check this box. So you'll see it might look like this. We're going to check the box and save it. So in General Ledger, that's all we have to do. We need to check that box, and we need to do that. Now, in Tabs 3, we have to make sure that our integration settings are set up properly. So let me get to my GL integration. Actually, we're just going to go do it up here. So here is my General Ledger integration setup. And so on my configure payments integration, we need to make sure that we are also having our costs. So I'm in my cost section, post to the client cost advance. So in this instance, I have a very simple breakdown for my costs. I'm doing it by type. Either I'm doing it by expenses, which is going to go into my expense income, or I'm doing it by advances, which is going to go into my client cost advance account. So I'm going to double click this so you can see. So I'm debiting my cash when a payment comes in, and I'm crediting that same client cost advance account that I had selected in my GL. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're going to that same account there. All right, once that's done, we're going to go ahead and say okay, and now that is there. Now we've configured our GL, so we have that. We've got that account set up there, and then now we need to also configure our accounts payable. So we're going to go into accounts payable, and we're going to make sure that underneath our utilities and then underneath our customization, whoops, and I need to actually close out of some things because I have some windows open in my other programs. So let me close this and let me get to my GL and close my chart. And let me get back into accounts payable, and there we go. So on the Tabs3 tab right here, we want to make sure that we are integrating with Tabs3. So I'm in accounts payable, and I want to make sure that that integrate with Tabs3 button is on. Okay. From the general ledger tab, I also want to make sure that I'm integrating with GLS, and I want to make sure that the invoice amounts are always forced to balance. Okay. So two things in here: integrate with Tabs3 and integrate with GLS, and then force the GLS amounts. So in order for all of this to work, the advanced client costs must be entered through accounts payable so that the total can then be properly calculated, and then it can be posted against the proper GLS account. So what that means is we don't want to enter client cost advance directly into Tabs or Practice Master. We want to make sure that we're entering our client cost advance right through accounts payable. Okay. Any advanced client cost amount item, it must have corresponding entries or adjustments made in all three of my systems. So if I have anything that happens to throw this off, I may have to make sure that I adjust it properly in all of the different areas. If I write something off in Tabs, I need to make sure that I'm adjusting GL to match that, because write-offs don't get posted to GL automatically. So I would have to make a manual entry to fix that. So we have to make sure that no matter what we do, we're looking at all three of these things. So there's a couple of do's and don'ts here that I wanted to talk about. So first, we want to enter all advances through all client cost advances through accounts payable. We just talked about that. So we always want to make sure that we are posting when we do that to, let me get into AP again. When we are doing our invoice manual checks, we always want to make sure that we're putting in our client cost advance on this screen, and on our general ledger, we are always going to be choosing, let me get something in here real quick. Put in just a $100 invoice here to UPS for postage. And on my general ledger screen, I always want to make sure that I'm posting to this client cost advance account. So that's definitely something that has to be done. You can do this with an unpaid invoice, a manual check, or an EFT. So when you're entering these in, that's when you're going to do it. When you're putting in the invoice or any of these things, it's always going to hit this account. You're only going to enter Tabs3 advances when entering the invoice in this window. We're not going to do this anywhere else. It's only going to be done here when we're entering the invoice. You want to make sure that your Tabs3 advances total matches the amount that you've configured to post into the client cost account. So we don't want to, if I'm going to post $100 into this account, okay, and on my next screen when it asks me to bill the client, I wouldn't want to enter it this way then. If I am going to bill $50 to the client, and maybe the other $50 is firm expenses, I need to split this. So when I'm posting something to the client cost advance account, I'm only going to post the amount I'm billing to a client. So let's do this for $50. And if I wanted to bill the other $50 to the firm, it's important that I choose another account, maybe for postage. And then I would put the other $50 to that, because I don't want that other $50 to be shown in my client cost advance. It's not owed to me by a client. It's something the firm is paying for our behalf. So we want to make sure that we only post money that we're billing into Tabs on the next screen. Okay. So then we would go ahead and we would save this. We'd save our invoice. And now our cost entry window opens up for our client. This is where this has to match. So if I'm going to bill this to John Williams, I want to make sure that I'm getting an advance code in here. I never want to put an expense code here, okay? We want an advance code, and it would only be for that matching amount. Now, maybe that $50 that I'm going to bill clients is 2 clients, $25 for each. That's fine. I can still put $50 on the previous screen, and then I can split that $50 between 2 clients. But you can see I wouldn't want to come over here and have my whole $100 in that account and then try only put 50 to a client. That wouldn't work, okay? So here, I'm just going to put the whole $50 there, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to save it. So now I've put a bill out there, an entry on the bill for the client for them to pay me, okay? Then I would go ahead and I would pay this invoice. I would go ahead and cut my check, do whatever I need to do. And then that would be out there waiting for the client to pay it back. Some don'ts that we want to do. So we don't want to enter advanced client costs directly into Tabs, Practice Master, Tabs3 Remote, or any other import data capture process. We do not want to do that. We want to enter everything through accounts payable. We don't want to skip the general ledger tab. Sometimes it's so easy to just come in when we're entering an invoice and put $50 to UPS and just let it go ahead and allocate however it was going to allocate. We don't come in and check this general ledger tab. So it's very important that you do check that. Don't ever skip that. Come in and make sure that the amount that you want to bill a client is exactly right. And if you need to split it out, that you've done so. And you don't ever want to skip the Tabs3 cost window that pops up after this. We always want to make sure that when that opens, that we are putting in the costs that we're going to bill the client or clients. We don't ever want to use expense T codes. We talked about that just a few minutes ago on the cost screen. We always want to make sure we're using an advance code. Okay, no expenses. And do not edit or delete advances via Tabs or Practice Master. We don't ever want to just go into Tabs and just delete them out. We don't want to bill this, or that was a mistake. We're just going to delete it out of Tabs or Practice Master. We've still got it sitting out here in accounts payable that yes, we did bill this and we are going to do this. And to just delete it out of Tabs or Practice Master will definitely give you a discrepancy on your report. And we do not want to bill Tabs3 advances for more or less than the amount configured to post. So let's say that I billed that client $50 for a UPS charge. And then over in Tabs, I decide, oh, you know what? I'm only going to bill that client for $25. We don't want to do that. We don't want to change the amount in Tabs. We don't want to write it up or write it down. We just don't, and then bill the client for less than what we had said that we were going to. That, again, is going to cause a discrepancy. We do not want to post journal entries directly to the advanced client cost account. So if I'm over in GL and make a journal entry and I with a journal entry, that's going to throw things off. And that's only if a manual journal entry is not required. Because remember, I said if we write off a journal or a client cost advance in Tabs, we do have to make a manual journal entry because those do not post to GL automatically. So that is an instance where, yes, we do need to make a manual journal entry because we wrote it off in Tabs, and now we have to make a journal entry to adjust it on the other side. Because remember, we have to adjust all 3 things at the same time. We have to make sure everything's in line. We don't want to write up or write down advances. Instead, we want to perform an adjustment in AP. But before you can do that, and sometimes this isn't always feasible, we would have to unpost the check in accounts payable, and we would also have to unupdate the statement in Tabs, which can cause some other things. So let's kind of look at that situation. And we don't ever want to write off advances in Tabs3 or for an APS invoice without making those manual journal entries that we talked. So those are just a couple of do's and don'ts to watch out for. We want to make sure that if we do all of those things, that when we come into General Ledger and we actually print our report, that we will be able to, let me get back to General Ledger, that we'll be able to do our advanced client cost report and not have any discrepancies. Now, if we do have discrepancies, there's always a way that we can go look at what is the discrepancy and we can find that out. So let's go do this report real quick. So I'm just going to do an advanced client cost report. And right now I can see that I have my Tabs3 advances that are due. And so I don't have anything that's currently due right now in my test data. There's nothing out there. I haven't billed, I just entered that client cost entry, but first off, I didn't print my check either for that, so that's not going to show up here. And I didn't bill the client yet. Yes, I created a cost entry, but I have nothing due. So you can see that Tabs3 advances due are 0. The Tabs3 WIP advances are going to show here. So within this, this little $210 is my $50 I billed the client. So this is where that shows up, is in the WIP, because we do take into account that WIP. Then that unposted, unpaid invoice that I also did. So I told you it's not going to show up in my advances due, but it will show up down here in my unposted, unpaid invoices. That's going to be down here in this $285 figure. And then also I have a line item for my unposted checks and EFTs. So maybe I printed my check, but I haven't posted it to GL yet. That's where this would show up in that column here. And then it would tell me what it calculates my amount to be. So it's taking my total WIP advances and it's taking, subtracting my unpaid invoices to give me my total. The bottom section is then going to look at my GL, and it's going to say, well, I see in our client cost advance account that we have $515 and we have a pending Tabs3 advance payments that are going to be coming in of $590. And so now if I subtract that, I have the negative 75 and I am in balance. Now, the good thing that this report also does is it tells you if you have a discrepancy, where to go to find out how to fix it. So our ultimate goal here is to be in balance. That's what we want. But if it's not, there's an article right here. It's R11757, and it's actually going to go through everything I have just talked about at the beginning, but then it's going to go through all of the ways that you can figure out and troubleshoot why you have a discrepancy, and then locate it and get the resolution to do so. It may be making a manual journal entry that you didn't have. It may be looking at, something in accounts payable that maybe got posted or not posted, or who knows. But it will go ahead and give you lots of different examples and lots of different ways that you can resolve that discrepancy. So this way, you always know what your client owes you or clients owe you from Tabs, what your account says in GL, and what has been posted in AP, so that the three all come together onto one report so that you can always keep these things in balance. So there you have it, a great report for you to use when it comes time to balance those cost advance.
And that's just one more way that we can help you to worry less
And practice more.